everybody, it's Kendra here. Welcome back. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to dye self-strapping yarn using the least amount of equipment as possible. Now, I made a video a while back and I received a lot of comments and messages after from people just starting out, commenting how it's hard when you don't have the required equipment. And I can totally relate to that because when I'm starting something new, I wanted to kind of test it out and see if I'm even going to like it before starting to collect equipment. I also just want to mention that what I have on hand is going to be different than what you have. My space available is different than what other people would have, and that's definitely just the way it is. We're not all going to be the same in that. However, maybe you can use these ideas and kind of adapt it to your space and adapt it to what you have and see if any of these tips will be able to help you in getting started to dye your yarn. So let's jump right in. So I've moved my kitchen chairs into as large of a circle as I can make in my space, and so I can go ahead and attach my yarn to my first chair, and I'm going to just be walking around and making that large circle, transferring my yarn from my Swift onto my chairs. Now, I know not everyone has a Swift. I'm guessing most people that like to work with dyed yarn or hand dyed yarn have some experience with it because yarn usually comes in that sort of hank. However, you could use more chairs to do the same thing. Anything that kind of supports the circle, but using the Swift really does help ease the whole process. I'm trying a few angles here to show you just what this large circle looks like. However, you can use this in your own home to make kind of however you can, whatever space that you are working with. You could do it in the hallway, you could do it through your kitchen, it doesn't have to be a square either. You're just aiming for that large circle and being able to lay it out flat like this instead of using a warping board or a warping mill. Next, I'm going to cut my ties, and I like to use the ties that came on the skein to do my figure 8 ties, and I use just a different kind of yarn here, the purple, to mark what each of my sections are going to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and attach that to my skein, doing those figure 8 ties throughout, and then measuring to do 4 equal stripes. I'm going to soak my yarn in water. And while I'm doing that, I'm actually just pulling out my container of baking supplies and food colorings and seeing what colors I have. All of these have been used for baking purposes, so there's little bits left in lots of them. I have a mixture of the Wilton gels as well as a package of the liquid food coloring. After my yarn has had some time to soak, I'm going to leave one section into the pot and add a nice big glug of vinegar as I bring it up to temperature. I like to keep that color in the pot, and you can see my ties matched up there, and I try to keep them as close to the waterline as I can and just try to match it up on the next color stripe that I'll be dyeing. I'm going to go ahead and begin mixing my colors. I just like to play around with it a little bit, see what I can come up with. I do try to err on the side of lots of food coloring just because I have had issues with things turning out pretty pale in the past. And so I'm just going to go ahead and try mixing my colors, make something interesting, and keep in mind that food coloring and dyeing with food dyes is not an exact science. Lots of colors are known to split, and just the way that the blue will take the dye at a different rate than the red in mixed colors, and so you can play around with it. I'll also add a really helpful link in the description that shows all sorts of food colorings and what they dye to, and I find it really fun to look at this site and see what they have come up with. But I like to test my dyes just dipping in a piece of paper towel, seeing how it looks, and use that to kind of modify and see how my colors are going to play together. When my water is at just below a boil, I'm going to go ahead and add my dye, and I like to just kind of swish it. I'm just using these yogurt containers, but you can use pretty much whatever. These are food colorings, so not acid dye, so you can kind of use what you have. And I just give it a stir, mix it up, and I'm going to keep it on the burner nice and hot until all that dye absorbs and you can tell that the water is clear again. My yarn's looking really nice, the water is nice and clear. I'm going to go ahead and just set it carefully in another container to let it cool and move on to my next stripe color. It's in the pot. We're going to get it up to temperature, nice and warm. And my next color is going to be Wilton Violet. And this is a color known to split, so I'm really interested to see what happens. I'm totally fine if it doesn't turn out purple, but I'm just going to carefully stir it in and yeah, see what happens with this next food coloring. While it heats up, I'm going ahead and mixing my next color, and don't be afraid to mix your colors. I started with a red, but it looked too orange, so I added a little bit more to it, and just kind of playing around with my different colors to come up with something I'm happy with. I cannot believe how quickly this dye exhausted. It only took, I think, like 3 minutes, you can see on the clock there, and it's totally clear, and it looks nice and evenly purple, which I'm really surprised about given the history and what, is known to happen with Wilton Violet. We're just going to go ahead and repeat this process for our last 2 color stripes. This is time to get creative, try different techniques. This next stripe is going to be solid, and then I'm going to try one combining all 3 colors, making little drops in the dye or in the yarn to see what kind of effect I can come up with. When all your dye is exhausted and you're happy with the outcome, go ahead and remove it from the burner, and this is where we're going to let everything cool down 100%. We don't want to be dealing with our hot yarn. We want it to cool to room temperature on its own, which will help with the color fastness as well, and then we will begin to rinse it out. So this is what I've ended up with. I do have it spread out here on my warping mill, so you can see all the colors. However, go ahead and make your same circle with your chairs in your house and put your yarn on it and remove your ties from there and go ahead and wind it up into a ball from that point. Honestly, having this warping mill has increased how quickly I can do this so many times over that I'm just going to do it here, kind of cheating a little bit, but please don't feel you have to. Go ahead and use your chair system. It works the same. It just means you're running around and it's already late when I am going ahead to do this. So I'm just going to, like I said, remove all those ties and then wind it up into a ball. Alright, so this is what I ended up with for my yarn. This is using totally food-safe dyes with vinegar and food coloring. Anyways, I hope these ideas have been helpful for you. If you haven't watched the other self-striping video, I really suggest you check that out. I kind of go into more detail about how I do things. But I really hope this gives you some ideas of how you can do it without any specialized equipment. Alright, that's it for me. Thanks for watching. Bye!